Well, it's getting serious in Syria. I mean, very serious.
The Syrian crisis at a peak, diplomatic tensions flying high.
The United States is disgusted that a couple members of this council continue to prevent us from fulfilling our sole purpose here.
As American officials switch on the traditional approach of dealing with regimes they just don't like.
Assad is crazy. He's a brutal dictator. He's killing his own people. This is the same narrative that we heard about Gaddafi.
The media is right there to echo whatever spin is presented by those in power.
Well, how disgusted are you?
Disgusted, Richard.
They identify with people in power. They echo what those people say. Secondly, they don't look too closely at the facts.
An information war kick-started as Russia and China refused to stand behind America's position.
Many are chanting, Russia is killing our children after a veto of
the Russians, and then the Chinese stand in the way at the UN.
But it was vetoed by Russia and China. Secretary of State Clinton reacted bitterly.
The Russian and Chinese veto of a regime change resolution reacted to with confrontation by politicians.
Clinton suggested Russia and China will eventually have to answer to the Syrian people for prolonging their pain.
And news headlines attacking the two countries without detail or context.
You represent a serious newspaper. Don't be ridiculous, please. No, my answer to your serious question, don't be ridiculous.
The media not showing the will to explain what led to the veto.
It's a crack in the wall of lies, basically, or a rip in the tissue of lies that's being presented by the media here. If you look closely, or even at all, at what Russia was saying, that there was violence taking place on both sides, you'd understand that what was happening was there was an armed insurgency backed by people from the outside.
But this is an inconvenient truth. The media have long dubbed the armed groups a popular democratic uprising.
The oppressors and the oppressed. Desperate new pleas come out of the country and growing calls for the world to stop the killing.
With all the yelling and screaming, there is no time to think about who the opposition might really be and what a toppled regime could lead to.
It's not enough to just say, Assad bad, rebels good. Who are these people? It's always possible to replace a mediocre or a terrible regime with something that's worse.
Journalist Matt Lee has been covering the UN for years and knows all too well how the media likes to approach what happens.
I cover the Security Council closely enough that I'll say, like, the sort of the common sense, the knee-jerk answer to almost everything that happens there, Russia and China are wrong and the West is right. If you're going to cover the Security Council, you might as well actually, like, try to cover what actually happens, rather than, if you come into each day just knowing in advance, you know, who's good, who's bad, and what's going to happen, I think that you can miss a lot.
Especially when the coverage narrative varies depending on where on the map the conflict stems from.
The statement that you hear that any leader who kills his own people has lost all legitimacy, if that really were the standard, I think a not insubstantial percentage of the world's leaders would have lost their legitimacy.
As the mainstream media sticks with journalism by press release, Americans who don't dig deeper themselves end up getting just one side of the story. With some facts amplified and others unexplained or simply left out, the media has gone from informing to misinforming the people. Anastasia Churkina, RT, New York.